Good evening. Once again, we find ourselves in a biology live class with TT. Today we are doing some answering technique. So that's all about how we use the knowledge that we've already got or the skills that we already have to squeeze the most amount of marks out of the exam as possible. Now, yesterday we did question analysis. The first step in understanding or getting good marks is understanding the question. Obviously, go back, watch the recording for that. Today, I'm working on the premise that we have understood the question. Now, that may or may not be the case always, but we like the technique. We can only apply good technique if we're shooting in the right direction, and that's all about the question analysis. And these are separate skills which we can practice separately. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Shanti. So as just I'll explain to YouTube people right now, I am broadcasting this to YouTube, but I will not be answering any questions from there. I'm not going to be looking at the chat on YouTube. I will be with YouTube and for the next 10 minutes until the live class sort of truly begins at 12:30, and I will then rejoin YouTube at the very end. So if you do have any questions about where you can find things, you can obviously hang on and answer questions or ask me questions then at the end. I'm going to be looking at the chat in our live class, which is a Zoom room. If you are on YouTube watching this and you would like to join me in my live class tomorrow at 5:30 p.m., or you've actually still got 8 minutes, so it's totally feasible to join today's live class and ask questions inside the chat. I'll give you a quick whistle stop tour. Basically, you have to be inside one of our courses as a member. You can try the free trial absolutely free, and you can then join our live classes. So Shanti and Sarah and those of you that have joined early, just change chat settings to panelists and attendees and say hello to me in the chat. That would be lovely. Okay, so I'm just going to use Zoom now. In fact, I've got, as always, I've got a million windows open, but let's just come out of that because I don't want to share that. I want to do that, and then this, and then this, and then happy days. Okay, so from our website, in fact, the link in the description of this YouTube video goes to the biology page. You're going to watch the video. This big orange button here is the one where you can choose which course you want. Do you do biology only, or do you do biology and maths, biology, chemistry, any of these, or do you just do biology, chemistry, and maths? You can choose each of these. Choose your exam board here, and then you can basically start the free trial. You need to put your payment card details in. The first 7 days are totally free. If you remain in the course beyond 7 days, you will be charged. If not, you're welcome to end your subscription at any time during that 7-day trial period. So if you choose a multiple subject combination, you can choose your exam boards after the checkout, just the way that the process of the system works. So you will get fully exam board specific courses, and that way you can then join our free trial. What I might actually also do is just show you a little screen share of where you're going to land when you end up inside those courses. And then let's do that now. So once you end up inside of the course, this is going to be the first page that you're on. I'd highly recommend watching the welcome videos and the how to learn how to revise videos here for biology, chemistry, maths. That's going to show you how to use the courses for maximum effect. You're then going to choose your subject from your My Courses page. And from the My Courses page, once you're in a subject course, you'll have lives in the menu at the top here. So as soon as you're in a biology course or a chemistry course or a maths course, you will have TT lives in the menu. Click on that and it will take you to the page where the Zoom link belongs. So it's pretty straightforward. And yeah, if you do, I'll just keep an eye on the YouTube chat. We just have Hussein right now. If you have any questions, we're not just Hussein. Olivia or Olivia. I don't know if it's pronounced any different from Olivia, but as I said, would you prefer that I just stop the lesson right now, Hussein? Yesterday I had 70 in my class, which was the most I've had all year. Obviously exams are like now. My priority is my members. People, if you would rather that we didn't do live classes on YouTube, then that's totally fine. What's your preference there? I'd love to just point that question to you. Hi, Charlotte. Hi, Hoagie. Is it Hoagie? My text is my second monitor is quite small over there. Yeah, essentially, right now I am insanely busy. I'm working till super late at night. That essentially I don't have the time to do separate classes for YouTube. And we thought we would just give YouTube subscribers a little bit of a taste of what we do in our live sessions, just to give you a flavor. I mean, ultimately, the reason that we do it is to help you out as much as we can, but to where we can help you the most is a membership. All these people in the live class with me right now in the Zoom room, hi to everyone, just change the chat settings to panelists and attendees so that everyone can see one another's answers. Like they have my primary focus. You know, I work so hard to improve their grades and answer all their questions as quickly as possible. Like they are 100% my focus. So if you end up with a TT membership, you get a little piece of me, and I want to make sure that I'm giving my members absolutely everything that they deserve. All right. We're coming up to the hour, as in today, I'll just repeat, I'm going to be doing some answering technique. It's suitable to all exam boards. I specialize in the AQA, OCR, and EdXL papers because I do all those papers every year. But the technique that I'm applying here will apply certainly to all biology papers. I've done a lot of the WJ and the CIE and all the other papers in the past. It may even apply to other subjects, although I'm not going to give you any advice about other subjects. I am a 100% A-level biology specialist, and that's what makes my course so effective. Yeah, it's hot in here. I wonder if I just might go crack the door just because it's going to get, I get super amped up when I'm doing my live classes. So let's do that before I begin. All right, let's go. Oh, my living wall looks great when I'm not sitting in front of it. Although I've got a couple of dead plants that I need to take care of. Right, any questions from either place right now? Any final questions before I sort of like go head down, get into it, answering technique? Okay, I'm going to pose an open question to you. What? Oh, okay. I'm going to start with, shall I start with good or shall I start with bad? I'm going to start with bad. I think it's easier to answer. What would be some examples of bad exam technique or things that you used to do that you've realized are not really serving you very well? So I want some examples of bad exam technique. Maybe things you did before you had a TT membership. Waffling, no keywords, waffling. So straight up there. From Sophia, from Kia, not understanding the importance of the command word. Yeah, so RTFQ, do you know that one? Not using carbs. Not reading the question properly. Is it Baja? How do I pronounce your name? Is it Baja, Baja? I answered your question in the How to Use TT course the other day with a little video. Yeah, not doing enough questions, like classic exam technique issues. Yeah, sometimes you get students answering the question that's just in their head, you know, just like, oh, they glimpse the question and then just say, oh, I think I know this one. And then they do it. And it's not actually the question that's been asked. Not using the right key terms, not stating the obvious, not rephrasing the question, not using carbs, writing too much, classic one. Okay, then before I give you my exam technique, the final minute here, what is... it might just be the mirror opposite. What are some bits of advice that you can give to students about using good biology exam technique? Focusing on the content. That could potentially be a good bit of advice. Students often get very content driven in biology because there is a huge amount of content. That's the biggest single obstacle to 3/4 of the A level. But as soon as you've got the content in your head and you're sort of at Easter time of year 13, suddenly we realize there's a whole lot of other factors we need to include. Being concise, look at the number of marks, use the key terms, be concise, always think about the actual topic of the question. Yeah, add in relevant key terms. Keep it more simple rather than trying to get too technical. Absolutely, Sophia. All right, we're at past. I'm going to move my YouTube chat over there. It'll be on the far extreme edge of my second screen is where that's going to be. Where do I want I want my Zoom chat straight in front. As always, let's try and keep the chat focused on what's going on screen. I will offer opportunities to go off topic and ask more general questions, certainly at the end and maybe in a checkpoint halfway through as well. My iPad is not plugged in, so it's not going to help very well for screen sharing. Let's correct that. I basically am not going to use my keyboard, I don't think, so that can get out of the way. Okay, my cup of tea is nice and hot still. Let's open up. All right, let's deep breaths. Okay, one thing I'm going to say before I jump into my iPad, you will need pen and paper and ideally a couple of colors. Doesn't really matter what the colors are. 2 colors would be a minimum. 3 colors would be nice. I'm going to suggest you do this on pen and paper because I think the exercises that I've designed are going to be more effective because I want you to write the answer and I'll take you through it at the time, but we're going to then revisit that answer and underline things, and doing it in the chat is going to be less good. If you simply are in a place where you don't have pen and paper, answer in the chat and modify as according. Like if I say underline the key points, then maybe just go through mentally of your answer and mentally highlight the key points that you think are going to get the marks. All right, let's do some screeny sharey goodness. Some things I love Zoom in some ways and I hate Zoom in others. Like every time I share my screen from this monitor, it just automatically moves it to my other monitor and then pauses my screen share, which means I can't write. Thanks. Zoom, if you're listening, I'd like that feature to be changed. Sarah, brilliant. Use a Word document. Here am I in my Stone Age technology. Okay, yeah, 100% you can use a Word document. Just underline or change color as you need. Okay, so as I stated briefly, in fact, let's go back a level. Let's go back a level. I think this is probably the best. I'm working on this. This is very much in beta, work in progress, something I do with my students. First question, when we're marking our answers, did you understand what the question was asking for? And if the answer to that was no, then we can come down here and we can look at the command word, and you gave me all the reasons for this. And this is what we did yesterday. This is question analysis. And I suppose I can put that in here. Then you need to go work on your question analysis. And that's not what I'm talking about today. Okay, if you did understand what the question was asking for, then would knowing more facts or being able to do more skills have got you more marks? And if yes, if you were missing content knowledge, then this is basically content. I don't want to write that in capitals, do I? Oh, what am I doing? Richard, content or skills, basically. In fact, maybe I'll do a skills branch off somewhere else. So if we do understand what the question is asking for, but when we look at the mark scheme, we already know those marking points, or we could have worked out those marking points from the information in the question, then no amount of new content knowledge is going to help us. Does that make sense? If we're coming down here, then this is answering technique, which is what we're talking about today. Actually, no. Okay, so we do understand the question. We look at the mark scheme. We already know the facts on the mark scheme, or we were able to work out the answer based upon the information in the question stem. So these are 2 different versions of the same thing, basically marking points that you already know the facts, or you could have worked out the answer from the info in the data in the question. So the stages here, always do the question closed book without any help, first of all. If you're peeking at the mark scheme, if you're watching my question response video, if you like going back to your notes to remember the fact, when to answer the question, no good. Answer it, get it wrong. I give you permission to make mistakes. It is all part of the learning process. Do the question. I'm going to put in here, no help. I'll often call that closed book. Just exam conditions, basically. Then Mark it and analyze it. We use our MID sheets at Tailored Tutors, all part of the Tailored Tutors revision method. But basically the analyze, super important. Where most students go wrong is that they do this and they do the mark part, and then they go back to another question and they do it and they mark it. They do another question, they mark it, and they don't do any of the good stuff, which is the analysis and then the improvement, which comes as a result from all the analysis that you do. And then for every marking point that you already know or that you could have worked out, then it wasn't knowledge, it was technique. So let's go and have a look at some things. We touched upon this yesterday. Oh, I gave you a little glimpse. I ignored my little note to self down here. What are the 5 points of carbs? Little test for you all. Some of you have been working with me on this for months. Some of you will only have heard this yesterday. Some of you will never have heard of it at all. What's the C? Give me the C. Command word, and I've got a screen of command words here. And how many marks is it? That's the thing. That's the first glimpse that you need. Okay, second up. Oh, Sarah's straight in there. The A, actual topic. So what is the underlying, and this is, if you've got 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, it could be a different actual topic for each of these. I'm not talking about entirety of question 6, because that's all going to be, if it's a photosynthesis question, it'll all be on photosynthesis. But that doesn't mean to say we can't have an enzymes question in there. We can't have a transport across membranes question in there. We can't have a respiration question in there under the banner of a photosynthesis question. So the actual topic of the question by individual question, part A, part B, part C. And okay, where are we up to? R. Review the key terms or the relevant key terms. Review the relevant key terms if you want to get them in there. Obviously, not just any key terms. This is a mental scan, dredging every relevant possible key term. And then we're going to cherry pick and select them when we do the B, which is bullet point your answers. So we're cherry picking. And I'm going to come back to that question. Now, do we have time in the exam to do cards for every single question? If we do it enough in practice, you will learn the questions where it's really useful for. Evaluating a practical, carbs isn't that useful. But any AO1 and most AO2 questions, it is going to be useful. So like learning when it's most valuable and when it's not, you just kind of have to internally calibrate by doing more past practices. Okay, so we're bullet pointing our answers, short sentences, single fact, single key term. I would much rather 3 sentences of 5 to 6 words than 1 sentence that's just flowing prose. It's way harder to get the marks in continuous prose than it is in short staccato sentences. Okay, and then the S, which we didn't really touch upon yesterday, is self-check. And I'm going to go through each of those. Okay, so now we've got each of them on the screen. We went through the C, the A, and the R yesterday, and I'm going to put R in question analysis and in answering technique. It kind of lives in both for me. It's in that halfway house. This dotted line is where we begin writing. So all of this happens in your brain. And then I'm trying to transfer more of the work to your brain, which is quicker, and less into the writing phase. If you think more and write less, it's going to be quicker than writing more of poorer quality, basically. Bullet pointer answers, I'm going to cover some of that in a minute. And self-check, the biggest things you can do in self-check are, how many have you said, I don't know, the messenger RNA is made into a polypeptide, but you didn't say translation. You've just like, it's not because you didn't know the word translation, it's just you didn't think to include it. That wasn't the way that it came out when you wrote it. So can you add more key terms? This is the simplest self-check that you can do. And I'm going to give you some other little bits and pieces. Check for obvious points. Yeah, maybe if you've skipped an obvious point, it's very difficult to reread a question. And if you misinterpreted it the first time, to reinterpret it the right way the second time, unless you've got a lot of time, which in the exam we are not going to have. So everyone I'm sure has had the experience. You can just say me, have you like misread a word and then you reread that sentence or that paragraph, and every single time you misread it after the first time, you just read the word that you misread it for the first time. You know, it happens to me. I'm not a great reader or writer all the time. Same with exam questions. If you make a fallacy in the interpretation of the question the first time, you're basically going to believe whatever you interpreted the question to be the first time. It's very difficult to come at it with fresh eyes and be like, oh, my entire conception of what the question was on about here was wrong. Sometimes you can do it, but it's not easy. That's why I don't try to suggest that in the self-check phase, because it often is just too time consuming. All right. Let's move on. Let's just get stuck into it. So I just summarized some of my good exam technique here. We've got the R, the B, and the S of carbs. So good technique. Review the key terms in your head nice and quickly. Riffle, shuffle, like going through a deck of cards. Active site, enzyme, tertiary structure, primary structure. Yeah, enzyme, substrate complex. We've got ionic bonds, tertiary bonds. Ionic bonds, hydrogen bonds, disulfide bridges. Just like bing, 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 bing. Just like they're the words that are the marks. That's the money. That's the gold right there. Then you've just got to sort it, sift it out, plonk it on a page in nice sentences, and you're winning. Okay, so pick the most relevant ones, because some of the time, these are not all going to be relevant to the specific question you've been asked, and use them in a logical order. Sometimes I just see a scattergun. If it's like a sequence, you ideally want to start at the beginning and then go through from the beginning to the end, starting in the middle, then going to the end, and then back to the beginning. It just shows the examiner your thoughts aren't that well organized. Bad technique for reviewing the key terms. Just start thinking without writing. Terrible idea. And just like you need to have just a quick scan before you start. B, bullet point, short sentences, one key term or 1 point in each. I can probably zoom in a little bit on here and I'll move across. So use full stops as bullet points. I get asked all the time, can I literally use bullet points in my question papers? The answer is yes, you are more than welcome to. You cannot do it for two types of question. The AQA essay question, no bullet points allowed. Must be continuous prose. For OCR and EdXL, the questions marked with an asterisk, where you get a level of response question or quality of communication answer, you cannot bullet point those either. But use full stops as bullet points. So it's exactly the same method, but instead of doing on a new line, do a bullet point, your full stop is the bullet point, just carry on. Full stop, carry on. It can be short staccato sentences. You're not being marked on your prose, you're being marked on your content and organization of content, not how many superfluous adjectives you put in there. There is no handout, by the way, so the recording will be available inside of the course. So you're welcome to make notes on all these things if you want to. Mimic the style of exam answers. I've done an analysis of the old spec mark schemes, and essentially there's less than 5 words per mark on the mark scheme for each mark. So we're trying to mimic that as best as we can. So what's bad exam technique when it comes to writing our answers? Writing in long flowing sentences, starting a sentence without knowing how it ends. Another exercise I used to do with my live tutees, they'd be midway through a sentence and I'd rip the paper out from underneath them and I'd say, how does that sentence end? And they're like, oh, I don't know, I was making it up as I was going along. If that's you, try this. Try the things I give you today and just notice. Just notice the difference it makes to your exam answers. It's just like very simple. No sentence begins unless you have composed that sentence in your brain. Full stop, bullet point. Think in bullet points. And then writing everything you can remember. This is a bit of a time pig. We just splurge everything we need to know. Often this does not answer the question very well. It just shows that I'm saying everything I know about a topic. I'm not thinking about what the actual question is and answering the question. And then finally for self-check, good exam technique, reading the question, reread the question and your answer if you have time. This might be a bit too time consuming for you, but with practice we can get faster. Add in as many key terms as possible, obviously, that are relevant. And underline the points. This is in practice. I've just put in practice in brackets here. Underline the points that you think are going to get the mark. And then bad exam technique for self-check is no self-check. I mean, time might dictate that you can't self-check every answer, and that's kind of okay. We need to, that's more than exam practice and timing and sequencing. And you're an OCR student, I believe. Then no is the answer to your question. No quality of written communication questions in AQA apart from paper 3, the essay question. All right, we touched upon this yesterday. Again, this document is in the document and downloads part of the course. I just highlighted the important ones here. We can use some of the strategies I'm going through today. Compare or compare and contrast. Basically, they are the same command word, because if you're comparing something, you're going to give the similarities and the differences. And that's going to help us structure our answer. In the same way for evaluate, we do reasons for, reasons against, or reasons in support of, and reasons against that argument. And if we're doing practicals, evaluating a practical, we can talk about the limitations of the validity of the practical as well. So these are just like pre-made exam structures that I'm going to share one with you later on as well. Explain, we have to give reasons for. Describe is do not give reasons. I see this all the time. Describe the trend here. This is going up because this is happening over there. It's like, I don't care why it's happening. The question is describe. It goes up, it goes down, it goes flat. That's the description. Yes, quite right. Sorry, I missed the question in the chat there. OCR and EdXL, if the question is marked by an asterisk, and sometimes they're a bit sneaky, sometimes the asterisk is with the question stem on the left-hand side of the page, and then the answer field is on the right-hand side of the page. For me, the asterisk should go next to the answer space. Learn your exam formats, because know the difference between paper 1 and paper 2. Are there multiple choice questions? Are there? Yeah, it's not always clear. Absolutely, it's not. And suggest what is it similar to in the spec. They're not expecting you to know outside the spec info. All right, moving on. At a pace. As I've just put a little note here, use pen and paper for this. If you have it, I would answer in black. I like my students to use my color scheme because then it makes everything nice and consistent over time. If you want to use your own colors, you're welcome to do so. Okay, this is a 5-mark question. It's simple, relatively simple, as Chris Tarrant would say. It's only easy if you know the answer. My color scheme is I answer in black. I then, well, okay, I highlight and I annotate the question in blue. So question analysis goes in blue. Question analysis. And a stage what I'll tell you about in a minute, black. I'm going to answer my questions just like I would in the exam. Ideally, use the same pen that you are going to use in the exam. As much, the better you can replicate the exam scenario, the better you will be prepared. Answer. And then I'm going to mark in red. And then I'm going to add in additional answers in green. And I'll demo that. Equals additional marking points that I didn't get, but I'll cover that at the time. Okay. You don't probably have the question, so you don't need to do the question analysis. And this is a pretty simple one to understand. Many different substances. So we're talking about different substances enter and leave. So you might want to say in and out. Again, just like I talked about sketching the question yesterday, just translating it into a way that makes its own sense. A cell by crossing the cell surface membrane. Okay, so it's given us that in writing. They didn't necessarily have to say this because they've told us that it's going into the cell. They could leave that up to you to figure that out, that it's crossing the cell surface membrane. Describe is our command word. How substances. So how substances can cross the cell surface membrane. Okay, so basically that first sentence is more or less irrelevant. This is our question. We might want to say describe all the ways. We have 5 marks. I'm going to give you answer the question. I've given you bits of exam technique right now, but I'm not going to elaborate anymore. Just write your normal exam answer to this question. I'm going to give you 4 minutes. The timer has begun. Again, do it on paper because I want you to underline and do things phase 2. I'll just check into the YouTube chat. Farah, which exam board are you for biology, Farah? If you let me know your exam board, I can send you a link to the direct page to make sure that you are at the right spot. We have a bunch of people in here, so I'm sure the links are all right. Halfway, 2 minutes down, 2 minutes to go. And I only gave you 4 minutes, not 5 minutes, just because we're tight on time today. Okay, Farah, I'll wait for the next question and pull the link and send it to you in a second because we've got 1 minute to go. Sam, you've got 5 points. Okay, so Sam, self-check. All right, in fact, I'm giving you clues as what I'm going to point you at. That's okay, Sam. Chill out. You've got 1 minute. I'm going to see if I can find this link for Farah Toot Sweet Rapid Quick here. Oh, that's what's going on. Farah, that link should work for you. Ugh. Oh, my days. And time is up. Okay, so there's probably not, if you do have something in the chat, feel free to send it through. I'm just going to return my windows to how they were before. Let me know, Farah, if whether that's working for you. Can I just check in the Zoom room? Can you just, anyone here from, just give me, if you just write your exam board in the chat, AQA, OCR, Excel, just to make sure that all the links and all the courses are working. AQA, OCR, any EdXLers? I haven't seen any, but I'm pretty sure that the link is working, and it was the OCR link that didn't seem to be working. Okay, let's have a look at this now. I'm going to skip over to the next page. My first question, did you use carbs? Did you use, mentally, did you use carbs? Yay or nay? I just let you go at it. Lots of yeses, some no's. You wrote it down, okay, kind of, you think so? This is AO1 questions like this, describe questions are probably the most effective. They are definitely, it's basically a dead set win each time. You kind of auto do it. Oh, that's making me feel great because that's kind of built in now. Okay, and I went through the command word and the marks with you, so everyone got the C at least. Okay, so now on your written answer, I want you to change color pen if you've got a different color pen. I would use blue for this. In my color coding system, I'd write my answer in black, and I would then change color. And I like you to underline the points that you think, just the bits that you think are going to get you the mark. That might be just a couple of words, could be the whole sentence, but ideally, what's the nugget? What's the thing that you had would you think will be on the mark scheme? We don't know at this point. You're just going to reread your answer, and I'll give you 1 minute for this. So that time has begun. So select the bits that, don't worry, Brandon, it was, if you're new to us, then I'm not expecting you to have it down pat just yet. But what I'm hopefully going to train you to do is show you its importance and show you how it can improve your answers. Okay, if in this minute you've underlined those things, I'd like you to rerun the command word and marks, the actual topic of the question. Well, it's transport across membranes. That's pretty straightforward. Review the key terms to yourself in your head. What are the relevant, all the relevant key terms on movement across membranes? And then when this minute is done in 20 seconds, once you've highlighted just the bits that you think are going to get you the marks, we've got 10 seconds. I'm going to give you the opportunity, and I would like you all to do this, not because I'm just trying to make you do extra work for no sake whatsoever, and it's just going to be long. I promise you that we're going to rewrite it using, that's our minute for underlining the key terms. We're going to rewrite our answer using as close to 5 words per mark. You can use as many short sentences, the actual topic of the question. I suppose I could have... So the actual topic here, I'll do that one for you. This one's, there's no mystery to this one. It's transport across membranes. So I would rewrite your answer. It doesn't really matter the color that you rewrite your answer in. Let's go with blue. That's sort of our second time round color. So we're extracting the good bits out of our first answer, and we're reapplying carbs, and we're writing our answer in short. If it's a long sentence and you've got multiple different key terms in there, break it up. Short sentences, each full stop becomes the bullet point. And maybe I can just demo quickly. How do I do it without giving you any marks? I'm going to answer a different question. I'm going to say, like, describe semi-conservative DNA replication. I would say DNA helicase. Pretty much my first full stop right there, if I was being super concise. And then I would say breaks the H bonds. In my exam, I would write hydrogen bonds between nucleotides. Full stop. Yeah, and then I'd say DNA polymerase. I'm obviously not answering that question. And then basically super short, tight sentences. I don't want to confuse you by just going off the wrong track here, but that's what I'm looking for. Break open each long sentence into multiple short sentences. Each one has its own key term. This year, you're probably going to get, technically you shouldn't write H bonds. You should write hydrogen bonds because it's not an abbreviation they've put in the specs. But let's not get into that right now. Really, you should be writing, you will probably be credited, but you can't guarantee being credited if you write H bonds. All right, I'm going to give you, how long do you want? 2 or 3 minutes for your rewrite? You may have already started. 2, universal, let's go. Started. We're on 2 minutes. We're cherry picking the bits that we think got the marks. We're going to make sure we have applied carbs. And so that's command word and marks, the actual topic of the question, reviewing the relevant key terms, bullet pointing our answers as concisely as possible, short sentences, 1 key term in each. Then when we finish, we're going to do a self-check and see if we can add in any additional key terms to our answer. Farah, did that link work for you? Does the join now button work on the page that I sent? Oh, you're in the Zoom chat. Perfect. I gave you front and center. Emily, I'd say no. As long as you have answered the questions and you feel comfortable answering the questions, finishing early isn't necessarily a problem. It's difficult to finish early because there's usually, if you're going through questions, you're like, I don't know, haven't got much to write, and then you finish early, maybe that's a problem. Or if you skip 3 or 4 questions because you didn't know where to begin, that's maybe a problem. But if you feel like you're completing answers as well as you normally do or better, then that's not a problem. Time's up. Sorry about that. I was chatting away to Emily's question. Carbs is definitely easier with AO1, 100% than AO2. Not really even that relevant for AO3, to be honest, except we can twist our key terms. Like when I'm looking at an AO3 evaluate question, I'm thinking about validity. I'm thinking about, was it done in culture or in real populations? Was it done in mice versus humans? Like, did they do a stats test? Did they do, have we calculated any standard deviations? Like there's another suite of things that I riffle through in my head other than just the relevant key terms to the topic. The topic becomes an evaluate practical, and then I go through a separate list of key terms in my head. We don't have time for every single bit of information in my head on terms of exam technique, but if you join my live classes as you do regularly, Adam, then I'll keep feeding them into you and just keep writing them down and keep practicing them because they will have effect. All right. So now I'm going to show you the mark scheme, and I'd like you to mark your answers. Again, I would switch up to red at this point if you're following the color scheme that I use in my exam guide. And I'd like you to mark both your answers and answering the question, which one is better and why? And did I put this somewhere? No, okay, different one. Yeah, which one is better and why? And I'm just going to, let's just put the question off the side here. I'm assuming that's big enough for everyone to read. I will run through it verbally, so I'm not just sitting here in silence. The order doesn't matter. There is no specific order that you should do this. When I put things in a logical order, sometimes it makes sense to do a certain order. Here, I wouldn't say there's anything. So we've got simple diffusion, or in fact, they're branching in facilitated diffusion for this, but diffusion from high to low concentration or down the concentration gradient. So, and then what does it? These are always the marks. And if you will look at my videos, this is how I put it in the actual content guide videos itself. What then can travel via simple diffusion? Small non-polar or lipid soluble molecules pass via the phospholipid bilayer. It's a bit harsh. They've said, or large polar water soluble molecules go through protein. So they've grouped diffusion and facilitated diffusion together, which is a little bit, to be honest, I 100% would have considered them separate things. So we've got, how does it move? What moves that way? You could also do what moves that way and how does it move? So if you said small non-polar molecules move by diffusion, you can say diffusion or down the concentration gradient, either or for those. Number 3, water moves by osmosis from high to low water potential. Technically, you don't have to say water potential if you're an EdXL student. It's not covered in your spec, but you can say, I think they put solute concentration in their spec. So from low to high solute concentration, which is just a weird way around of doing it, to be perfectly honest, but that's EdXL for you. So 1 for water and osmosis. I'd like to see osmosis in the answer if you're mentioning water for sure. Active transport, high to low, from low to high concentration or against the concentration gradient. And then either active transport or facilitated diffusion involves proteins, carrier proteins, channel proteins. Technically, if it's active transport, it's using a carrier protein and not a channel protein. Active transport requires ATP. And then this is an AQA question. This is not hugely relevant to anybody else, to be honest. Let's ignore marking point 7. It's a co-transporter. You could mention co-transporters. You could also mention aquaporins for marking point 3. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that you could say water is polar, right? So it's going through a protein. So that would be that marking point there. Up the concentration gradient? Yeah, you could say they've said literally down the concentration gradient here. So you're welcome to apply that to here. Okay, so Kathy, that's one of those things that in SelfCheck, all those relevant key terms, some like, what can we say? Forgot to mention ATP. Okay, what did we forget? That's an interesting exercise. Which simple thing did you already know that you didn't get? I think, this is my judgment, at this stage of the year, any year 12 or any year 13 should know, is 5 marks here, at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, should be able to get 4 or 5 out of 5. Concentration gradient, high to low water potential. Okay, these are the things. How much extra work do you need to do to learn that stuff? It's already in there. We don't have to do any extra work to learn this because we've already know it. So this is where this is so valuable. It's squeezing the marks. How do we process these questions and get the words that we put on the page into a way that gives us the marks for them? 100% Mez, and getting it clear on the page is a nice way of saying it. And what I'm trying to do with carbs basically is more thinking and processing and less writing, because writing is slow and thinking is fast. We can get more power done by processing all of this and then writing fewer words and still get more marks from it. Yeah, if you say water moves by osmosis, let's just double check that mark scheme to make sure that I'm not giving you porkies there. Yeah, water moves by osmosis is the entire point, so that's okay. Where does it say that? 0.5 facilitated. Reject active transport. As of 0.5, does that consider facilitate as separate from simple diffusion? Here you can say either simple diffusion or facilitated diffusion is going down the concentration gradient. That's the point for marking 0.1. And the point for marking 0.5 is that active transport or facilitated diffusion involves protein, and they're specifically mentioned carriers because of active transport. Okay, and co-transport is not in every spec, so I didn't highlight that. Okay, so let's have another go. Same exercise, basically. Again, pretty simple. I'm going to get you to do, obviously, the carb stage of carbs on your own. Try to apply all of these things from the beginning. So the 5 words per mark, short sentences using bullet points, full stops as bullet points. Then we'll do the self-check and add in any extra key terms and underline in blue in this other color here. Oh, that's not going to help us out. The bits where you think you've got your marks. And then we'll mark it together. So basically we're doing everything above that line there. Rich, I should just be a little bit neater, shouldn't I? So we're doing all of this right now. Oh my God, right, neater. We're doing all of this up to the red line. Got a 5-mark question. Happy with 4 marks? 4 minutes, sorry. It's a bit of a stretch. Normally you have a little bit longer than that, but I'm pushing you. So timer has begun. 3 minutes 57 on the clock. I'll have a go at this. Why don't I have a go at this? I'm going to pause my screen share though, so you can't see it. What's the question? 2 minutes to go. Right neatly. "30 seconds to go." I'm not following my own advice. I'm not self-checking. I think you can say both, Sam. Time is up. I just saw a question on YouTube there about, can you use abbreviations in your exam? The answer is only if they have been abbreviated in your spec. Deoxyribonucleic acid, you'll see in brackets in the spec, DNA. Perfectly fine to write DNA. You cannot write abbreviations that you've invented or that are not written in the spec. I have produced a PDF of every acceptable abbreviation from the spec for each exam board and put them in my course. They're on the documents and downloads page. Just one of the things I do to save you time, because that's why you join TT. Okay, so here's my answer. This is my answer space. Notice here we have describe and explain. So we have to give the describe point, and then we have to connect it to the explain, the reason. So this is the point or the feature, and then the reason. And the reason that it allows rapid exchange. And that's what we're looking for. So that's the general structure. Let's just read my answer before I check the mark scheme. Again, I don't cheat on these things. I might not have 5 out of 5, and I didn't do much self-check. So, and I didn't underline the bits that I think are going to get the marks in blue. So let's do that now. Alveoli, increase surface area. Oh, I'll do increase surface area, increase rate of diffusion. Circulation and ventilation, increase concentration gradient, increase rate of diffusion. Obviously, I haven't written much fluff because I'm quite good at this already. Capillary and alveoli, epithelia, 1 cell thick, short diffusion pathway, increased rate of diffusion. I think all those things are marked. So let's pull. Ooh, no. Let's pull. Interesting. What I want to do this guy, and I guess I want to bring it to the front. Interesting. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to go back over here, and oh, Ricardo, you're making a mess of this. Okay, let's duplicate this slide, and then over here I can bring this one to the front. And now we have our mark scheme. Okay, so we have many alveoli or many alveoli walls folded to provide a large surface area. I'm not sure I actually got that one there. So many alveoli provide a large surface, neutral alveoli provide a large surface area. So I think I'm probably already one down over here. Well, that doesn't mean we can't get full marks, but I have to say many. I think I prefer the underline actually. Or we have to say the walls are folded. Large surface area. You say many capillaries, large surface area. So fast diffusion. Diffusion is the allow fast diffusion only once. So we're only getting, basically it's 3 or 7 or 10, I think. It's just a weird mark scheme in terms of that. Alveoli capillary walls, epithelium lining are thin, short distance between the alveoli and blood. Flattened squamous epithelium, if you want to say that, it's not typical. Short diffusion distance, so fast diffusion. But again, I think we can only, you can't get 0.3, 0.7 and 0.10. I don't think that's, I think that's what they're saying for fast diffusion is only allowed once. And then we have ventilation or circulation of the air, circulation of the blood maintains a diffusion concentration gradient, so fast diffusion. So let's go back and have a little look. So I've said here, so now in green, this is what I'm going to do. I need to say many alveoli or capillaries, it was. Or you could say folded or folded. I think they use the term walls. Equals an increase in surface area. Give me a second. I'm going to mark my answer, then I'll come back to the chat. So I can't, it's difficult to do both at the same time. So I dropped that one there. Increase, I'm going to have to. Increase rate of diffusion. I'm only going to get this once and I get it here and I get it here. So that I'm just going to do one tick for that. Circulation of the blood and ventilation of the air. So that was a marking point for both of those. Increase the concentration gradient, get a mark for that. So this does match up. This was a mark. So the epithelium 1 cell thick, short diffusion pathway, increased rate of diffusion, but I only get that mark there. So I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 5. So even though I got the first one not right, I still get full marks. Okay, I'll just pay attention to the chat now because I missed some there. Okay, so that's the explain part. Give reasons. I mean, to be honest, even if you hadn't said that though, Kathy, you could still get, you could get 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So you could still get full marks without saying that. The surface to volume ratio probably isn't that relevant here, Brandon. It's the adaptation is the folded epithelia or the many small capillaries, which just, it's a greater increase in net. Large for marking point 1. If we're saying large alveoles, large number of alveoles, good. Large alveoles, large network of capillaries. I mean, at some point it does come down to the subjectivity of the marker. But I'd say that's probably okay. Large network of capillaries. Okay, so did anyone get a mark, an extra mark for their self-check? Did anyone go back and add a key term or a point which got a mark? Sarah, yes. Sharu, yes. Didn't have enough time. Sophia, yes. Brandon, yes. Fatima, yes. Added ventilation, Emily got a yes. Okay, no time for self-check. Okay, no time. We were short on time on that question. Do you see how you do this? You get 2 extra marks on a paper. Paper 1, paper 2, paper 3. That's 6 extra marks. That's a grade right there. I've just given it to you. You're welcome. You are absolutely welcome to that grade improvement in one piece of advice. Practice it. You'll get better at it. And you will, these things combined will be 2, 3, 4 marks per paper. That's nearly 2 grades in just technique with only the information that's already existing in your brain. Holy moly, I've just seen the time and I need to get my skates on here. Don't use comparative language, this sort of question. It's not this one that's coming up, yes, but this is describe and explain how the lungs are adapted for rapid gas exchange. What are we comparing? What would we be comparing? How the lungs are adapted. I mean, it's a tiny point here. They're saying how the lungs are adapted, not have become adapted. If they said this lungfish has rudimentary gills and this other type of fish has more developed gills, how have they changed? You'd say large surface area, short diffusion pathway, increased ventilation. So I would say it never hurts to add the ER, because sometimes if it is a comparative, you must have the ERs. But if not, here I'd say it's a minor point, but it certainly doesn't hurt. Okay, so this question here, we're going to probably overrun a little bit today. I'll give you the headline facts on that. I think that's happening. So describe, always worth paying attention to this word, describe how the structures of starch and cellulose molecules are related to their function. Okay, so command word is describe. We've got 5 marks here. Why have I said 6? This is how I would mentally structure my answer on the exam. Yeah, well, I'm going to do starch, cellulose, and then I'm going to go structure to function. And like this should be, and now basically it's going to be, I can't get an odd number. I'm going to aim, my target is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now it might be that we can't get that many, but that's okay. In my head though, any imbalance, evaluate questions out of 5, I always make them out of 6 and try and get 3, 4, and 3 again. Sometimes you can't get 3 of each. That's all right, but that's just in my head. I'm any kind of split answer, I'm going to make it an even number and aim for the bigger one. I've written here this word. So this could also be therefore, but obviously it takes longer to write therefore, or hence, if you're a hence kind of person. But that is the transition between the structure and the function. This structure gives this function. And so super quick, super easy, and links those two things together. Now I've got a bunch of other stuff I want to show you. I've already used most of my hour. I'm going to get you to do this one in your head in, I'm super tight on time, 1 minute. I've done command word. Actual topic of the question is structure and function of starch and cellulose. Review the key terms and basically organize them in sentence or in your brain. This structure, so that function. This structure, so that function, and get as many as you can in 1 minute. Your time has just begun. "20 seconds. Sam, beta glucose causes what to be the structure? Beta glucose is like a meta point within the structure. straight chain. Again, my polymers and carbohydrates lesson is just going to answer this one for you in essence, but I'm going to bring this guy to the front, and here's our mark scheme. Starch. Starch obviously is two compounds. We have amylose and amylopectin, and the exam boards are very inconsistent. They want you to know about both, but they will frequently just call it starch, which is not very useful to us. So whenever you see starch, we assume it is both. It is both branched and it is unbranched because it is a mixture of two compounds. So we should be able to get away with saying both of those things. Helical or spiral, so compact. Look at this word, so. This is your bridge. This is the technique to answer these questions, linking this to that. Large molecule, so it's insoluble or osmotically inactive. It's branched, so glucose is easily or readily hydrolyzed for respiration. Do you need respiration? I don't think you need. Oh, it does say easily released. I think you don't have to specify for respiration, would be my best guess there. It's a large molecule, so it cannot leave or cross the cell surface membrane. Cellulose, again, max 3 for each. That's what I said in my marks. I didn't know that was what it said on the mark scheme. I just know from experience. It's long, straight or unbranched chains of beta glucose. For me, I would have said, so hydrogen bonds, so it's strong for cell walls. I don't think they've elaborated on that point very well. Okay, well, they put joined by hydrogen bonds to form micro and macrofibrils, provides strength and rigidity. So their structure for cellulose is pretty crappy, to be honest, but that's the sequence. Yeah, I mean, I would have done this in joined by SOs. Ignore unbranched. Well, I mean, look at the inconsistencies in this. I hate them. Hate them. If you're going to be talking about it being helical, which is therefore you're talking about amylose, then amylose is unbranched. It's saying for marking point 3, ignore unbranched. Drives me crazy. You can do this same structure for compare and contrast by using similarities, differences. Or you can say evaluate. You can do for and against. Yep, 100% you can say does not affect water potential down here, Brandon. Yeah, why insoluble? Does not dissolve in the rain. Which one is more insoluble between amylose and amylopectin? Anyone want to have a guess at that? There is a amylose or amylopectin. I'd say which one is more soluble is easier to answer. Sharu, you can. There's nothing stopping you writing a table. I would prefer to see it, or you probably examiners would prefer to see an evaluate question. This is your answer lines. I would say for point effectively, and then against point, rather than a table with for and against like this. Either would be technically accepted as long as your points are on the page. I would think amylopectin is going to be more soluble. It's more branched. It's got more of its OHs, the bits that are going to form hydrogen bonds with water, accessible to the outside world in that branch structure than it does in amylose. This is a different type of question entirely. Less fact, less recall, and we're going to see how we can apply this here. I'm going to do it probably at least another 15 minutes. We've got not a lot left to go, but this is an important one. I've got this one and then a follow-up as well. I'm going to analyze the question together. Let's do that to begin with. The research scientist then investigated the effect of a drug called OGF on the growth of tumors in mice, not in humans. OGF and Taxol were injected into different mice at separate treatments or as combined treatments. Figure 4 and Figure 5 shows the results from this second investigation. Volume of tumor, time in days of our control. Always good at this point just to link, mentally, to link which one is which. Just what, whenever we've got multiple stuff happening on a graph, it's very easy to get confused. So just making that connection so we know which one is which. Then in Figure 5, we've got the treatment and the mean volume in tumor following 70 days in 70 days of treatment. So what, okay, let's get our head around what's going on here, because that's really important when we're doing graph questions. The control is obviously the normal tumor size. Any decrease in tumor volume means you've got less tumor. This is what we are hoping the drug will do, presumably. So basically, the lower down here, the more effective the drug. That's the take-home point for the graph. Now for the here, we've got the mean volume of the tumor following 70 days of treatment, so that we're basically just taking the data from the 70-day treatment line and giving a fixed volume, which is in millimeters cubed, all the data stacks up. Plus, we're given the standard deviation. So instead of them, you'll often get standard deviations drawn like this. I'm just making them up. I'm not looking at the data whatsoever. I'm just like, you'll get stuff like that drawn. And that's just representing the plus 28.3 and the minus 28.3 here and here. So it's basically similar data, or it's the same data, but here we've got the extra bits of the standard deviations. So they used Figure 4 and Figure 5, so both, or use, it's telling us a command to evaluate the effectiveness of the two drugs. So what do we mean by effectiveness is a thing we need to figure out for ourselves here when they are used separately and combined. So we need to reference this one, and this one, all compared against the control. So that's at least, give me one sentence. So we can break this down. My advice for these questions are basically, you have to process what's going on and get our head around this first. So what I've done here, basically the lower down, the smaller the volume, the more effective the drug. And then we can look at the standard deviations in a minute. Keep it simple. This is where the technique of carbs is really useful. This is where the bullet point, your key terms, with 1 point or fact per sentence. One simple fact in each sentence. So I'll demonstrate with one. We could say that individually, so we're talking about them separately and we're talking about them combined. There's lots of, I would just give a string. Oh, just so much easier for me to answer it, but I think you'll get more from it. I'll try this. Give me single sentences. I'll give you one example and not more. Okay, I'm going to throw it open to you. Pick a single fact you can choose from either the graph. In fact, let's just start with the graph. Let's start with the graph. It's easier than muddying the waters with Figure 5. Give me one fact you can state about this. We're looking at effectiveness, which we can code. What's effectiveness code for? How much does it decrease the volume of the tuner? So that's what, when I circled this, I'm linking it to the graph. OGF is the lowest volume. What do we mean by that? I'd say that's a tricky one. OGF and Taxol combined is most effective. Okay, really nice, Fatima. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. In fact, I got that from Megan as well. Control group with, okay, Liam, correct, exactly what I was looking for, except what are we doing? We're evaluating the drugs against the control. So stating about the control on its own, probably not going to get us a mark. We can say compared to the control, all the treatments show a decrease in volume. Okay, so you see, we've got to really RTFQ, read the fucking question. Yeah, basically we have to do the analysis and make sure, okay, Megan, OGF alone has a higher. Again, Megan, we've got to be careful here. You said OGF alone has, you said lower efficiency than Taxol. No, lower efficiency. The smaller the value, the less effective it is. So the further it drops, Taxol, triangles, is a smaller tumor than OGF, which means Taxol is more effective, or you can say the reverse and OGF is less effective. We're looking for, I would probably start with saying the smaller the volume of the tumor, the greater the effectiveness. Just state, but no questions asked, that the examiner knows that I understand the word effectiveness in the question correlates to a decrease in the volume of tumor. And then it's just as many of these things that you can go. And in fact, I think we're just gonna, I haven't even looked at figure 5 yet. Both chemicals on their own slow down the growth or are effective. Okay, so OGF is effective, Taxol is effective. That's statement, short fact, short fact. You can have as many sentences as you want here. Taxol is more effective than OGF. You can say OGF is less effective than Taxol. Would I look at this at day 30, the fact they cross over? Maybe at the end of my answer. If I feel like I'm struggling for the 4 marks, then I would. But not unless I really feel like. Yeah, we can say that. Combined treatment seems the most effective. So this is all from figure 4. And then the only bit from figure 5 is that the standard deviations for OGF with Taxol is not conclusive. So the standard deviation, so 300, which one's bigger here? 322 minus 28.3 overlaps with 207 plus and Taxol. OGF with Taxol. Oh, and Taxol on its own. Okay, I'm wrong with that. I'm just reading the data. These two, the OGF with Taxol versus Taxol on its own, these two overlap. So if we take 190 plus 25.7 and we take Taxol and do 207 minus 22.5, then those numbers, this value would have come down lower than that value has gone up, which means we've got overlap, which means that these numbers are not significantly different, or we can't trust these numbers to be significantly different, or there could be chance could be involved in the treatment. Do you see? I didn't give you the opportunity to make the mistakes on that question like I wanted to. I wanted you to start writing, and I bet I would have had reams of text. You can just answer now. How many of you previously for that question would have written a lot and written continuous prose 100%, 1000% waffle? Like, I really wanted to set you up to basically make the mistake so that I could then check in and say, basically, we're looking for bullet point facts. We're looking for individual nuggets of truth and just as many of them as we can. And then the big exam technique with this more question understanding is linking effectiveness to volume of tumor. Well, that's where it says figure 4 and figure 5. So basically most of it was figure 4. And had they put the standard deviation bars on figure 4, then we wouldn't have needed figure 5 at all. It's just giving it to us in a data format rather than a graphical format. Yeah, look how many words there are. Both chemicals are effective. Both chemicals are effective. 4 words. Taxol is more effective than OGF. 2, 4, 6 words. Combined treatment is most effective. 5 words. And then standard deviations for these two overlap. This one sentence is a little bit longer. Again, Liam, the control isn't an experiment. It's the control. There is no treatment, so we can't say it's effective. It's the bench line and the benchmark against which we test. And we know that from the question stem, by we're being told to evaluate the two drugs separately, and the drugs, the control, there is no drug. So nothing to talk about. Okay, similar one here. Slight added complication. This is mixing the skills that we've done already. They've got describe and explain, 5 marks. Obviously, I've not put the full mark scheme in here. Again, don't forget everything we've just learned here. I'm using this as an example. Again, normally what I would get here is a long streams of consciousness about enzymes. It's not what I'm looking for. I'm saying find definitive facts, 1 fact per bullet point, as fewer words as possible, as many points as possible. I'm going to give you 3 minutes, which is going to be ridiculously quick, but you've got 3 minutes and it's begun. Yes, Sam, it's the last question. I will give you some recap, things to practice, and a ridiculous example, which we're not going to do the question for. Just over 1 minute remaining. If you're finished, you can just let me know, just say done. Again, you may have written this in the chat, but I'm imagining most of you have written on paper, so we can. Okay, just gives me an idea that some of you are on track. I might cut it 30 seconds short because we're overrunning already. Okay, I'm going to say 20 seconds. Imran, what's your advice to anyone who's just got an email from the student room suggesting that they try it out? Oh, okay, that's my, no, in fact, with the timer. Definitely try it out and save my life. Well, that's nice to know. Well done, Emily, you found your way in. I'm going to give you the full time. Boom, boom. Okay, so let's have a look at this and see if we can pull this out of the way. Again, we're looking for simple facts. All of these things, I'm hoping that none of the questions today you just wouldn't have been able to do. They're all accessible, and with better technique, we can chisel away. And don't get the impression that I think you should be getting 100% on every question, even for ones when we know the answer. Look at my responses in the exam guide. I drop marks all the time. All I'm doing is trying to provide you with techniques to minimize point and mark wastage, because that's what it is. It's wasting marks. Okay. Initial rate of reaction faster at 37 degrees. So basically this angle is greater than that angle in the first little bit of the graph. That's our describe. And now we have our explain. So this is our D and this is our E. So we're looking really for 3 differences with 3 reasons. Yeah, and then again, we make it 6 marks instead of 5. Yeah, you can say reverse argument. Absolutely, you can say initial rate of reaction slower at 25 degrees than 37. Okay, this is a second explain point, actually. So more enzyme. Again, for explain or linking describe to explains, the word so is going to save you so much time and structure your answers way better. So this maybe isn't quite right. Maybe they're looking for 2 differences with, I guess, 2, well, that would then be 4 reasons or 2 for each. I'm not sure how to write that, so I'm just going to scribble it out. The graph plateaus at 37 degrees because all the substrate is used up. Allow converse argument. So when we're doing graph analysis, and I'm probably going to touch upon graph analysis tomorrow, is that we divide graphs basically into straight line sections. So we have phase 1 and phase 2 of this graph, and we basically only have 1 phase for this graph. So that's how we know where, in fact, I suppose my initial blue line should really go up to there. But that's how we break down graphs. That's the phase of the graph. Obviously, it might be fluctuating on its way up and then fluctuating on the top. But again, still, the trend is this and then this. It might go up, it might go down, it might flatten off, it might go up again, might go down to 0. So all our points of interest would be things that we can talk about. You're not going to get a graph that's that complicated, but that is how we break down graphs and know where they, how do I know? Why do I not need to talk about this bit here? Well, the salient point is that it's increasing and then it flattens off. They're the sections that they want. Yeah, Kia, so it doesn't matter because we can allow converse argument. You can say it whichever way around you want. Doesn't matter if you phrase it by 25 or 37. Well, you need to talk about collisions when temperature is involved. Basically, higher temperature and more kinetic energy, more successful collisions. So this is about temperature. If it was about changing pH, I mean, you can still talk about it when we're changing substrate concentration, but it's mostly going to be kinetic energy and collisions with temperature. For just stating that this is linear, without stating why does it not flatten off? Because we haven't converted all the substrate into product yet. And we know that because we are still making more product, because that's what the graph tells us. Well, we know from our own knowledge, though, where the question is, how would you know that the enzyme, it hasn't denatured here? Annum. 37 degrees is like optimal human, mammal, warm-blooded, endothermic temperature. How do you know it hasn't denatured? Because the temperature is not, then it's not high enough. Basically, up to 37 degrees, you're golden. The reason why there's no more product being formed is because the substrate has all been used up. Okay, so a few final things, no more questions. I just like put my stream of consciousness down here. On the number of marks is the only thing that tells you how much to write. It is not the number of lines in the question. And just look at this. And we're not doing this question. 4 marks, 22 lines of available space. They really do not want you to use additional pages because it's more of a pain in the ass for them to mark. That's why they're giving you, this is specifically AQA, but all the exam boards are doing this more than they used to, giving you excess space. And if you think for a second that you need to write 2/3 or all of this to get 4 marks, you are totally screwing yourself over. You can answer this in theory, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, possibly 6 lines. That should be enough. Unless you've got giant handwriting. They have to factor for the person with the biggest handwriting in the country, right? If you're getting like once there is if you're getting 4 words to a line, you're going to need kind of some of that space. But basically, it's ridiculous. This is the only thing that matters. Okay, for condensing your information down for AO1 answers, my cheat sheets are going to be your saving grace. They are just like exemplar answers of how to get more key terms in fewer, shorter sentences. More short sentences. Each sentence has a bullet point or a key term, a fact or a key term. Obviously, that question we're doing about Taxol and the different drugs, it's not AO1 knowledge, but it is a fact that you are deducing from the data. Keep it focused on the question, which is all about our question analysis we did yesterday. Check out the recording if you missed it. And make sure you analyze your answers afterwards and you don't fall down the trap hole that most students make, is do the question, mark it, move on. Do the question, mark it, move on. You are missing the most important step, which is the analysis, reflection, and improvement. So use the tailored tutors revision method to structure your revision so that you are linking the mark scheme to the question paper and your answers. You should be able to see eventually a clear connection between the question paper, your answer, and what the marking points are. And obviously, ideally, these two are very similar, but if they're not, you need to know why. Cheat sheets, yeah, they're gonna be on the topic revision pages very soon. I need to update those pages, but they're in the documents and downloads page. In the top section. Okay, these are the exercises that we kind of went through today and that I suggest you use as practice. Write your answer. Ideally, use carbs, use all the tools that I've given you. Select the bits of your answer that you think are going to get the marks, underline them in blue. Rewrite your answer in a more condensed format, using only those, using 5 words per mark, using all that key term stuff, then mark it. So this is basically this one I've written out in short here. Analyze it with the question with carbs, answer it in black, underline the words or points that you think are going to get the marks in blue, rewrite your answer with only the good bits, mark both and underline the marks in red, compare your answers, and then add in any marks you didn't get, like the alveoli one that I didn't get, in green. This is going to be a really nice, clean structure for you to review and analyze. This is if you struggle with waffling, this is a really good exercise to run through. Then obviously we can look at incorporating 5 words per mark. We can look at doing 3 words per mark when we get basically just down to bullet pointing the relevant key terms in a relevant order. Or like for the Taxol question, Taxol more effective than OGF. Okay, 3 words is a stretch, but it's a challenge to like, cut away everything that's not important. And then double speed papers. We can try practicing papers at double speed, super bullet pointy, super scanny. These are quite advanced measures down here. It's going to reveal weaknesses and stuff in your analysis and technique. Okay, so I'm going to come back to you again. What were the biggest takeaways? What was the best pieces of advice? From answering technique. Emphasizing self-check from Megan, 5 words per mark from Sarah, the self-check. RTQ, read the question. I don't mind the F in there. Quite a fan of the F in RTFQ. Condense sentences into bullet points. Self-check and add key terms. 5 words per mark. All of carbs is great. Thanks, Marima. Bullet point, using full stops as a bullet. Super concise sentences, more sentences, but shorter nuggets of fact. Self-checking with key terms. RTFQ. So the RTFQ is really, that's question analysis. We really want to be doing that work and like pointing ourselves in the right direction. And then the technique today is like the bullet pointing, the self-checking, the underlining, linking the bits that we got, which bits can we cut out of our answers, and all that sort of reflection is important to realize which bits we can get rid of and which bits we've got to focus on cramming in. Helped explain carbs. Golden nuggets of fact. Fatima, I love a golden nugget. Reread the question when self-checking. Where can we find the last 4-mark question you showed us? What was that? The last one was the enzyme substrate graph, 25 degrees, 37 degrees. Is that the one you mean? Oh, the lowest significant difference. Which exam board do you do, Cliz? It is an AQA question. 1 second. I am a wizard at finding questions. So that's an unusual search term. LSD. I don't search papers for LSD very often. It is AQA A-level, paper 1, 2017, question 6. So A-level paper 1, 2017, question 6. Wonderful. Well, I will update the recording. I'm super bleached out. I'm going to lean back and be a bit more in focus. So I'll update the recording in a couple of hours once the recording has processed. It will be on the live classes page inside of the Academy. So again, once you're in a subject course, you can click the TT Lives button and you can go rewatch it, brush up on any notes. I would implore you all to try practicing some of these things and ideally feed back to me which ones are working and why, which ones are not working. If you know why that is, then let me know. The more feedback I get from you, in the same way that you doing the question, analyzing it, marking it, and getting that feedback loop going so that you can continually improve, my mission is to continually improve my teaching. So the more you can feed back to me what works and doesn't, and ideally some reasons why, the better I can make these things. I hope that, has anyone ever done exam technique? Has any of your teachers done exam technique with you? I don't know, as effectively like I do? No, never, no, never, no, never. Lucy's getting a bit yes. First yes. Not as good as this. Well, Kathy, you've got a good one. Okay. Do you feel intrinsically like it's helping, like that by doing these things is going to help? I know it's going to help you, but okay, great. I mean, like, because the worst thing is for me, from a teacher's perspective, sometimes I'm trying to do something and the students don't have buy-in. They can't see how the value is going to affect them. Like these training exercises, sure, writing your answer and then rewriting the same answer 5 minutes later using fewer words seems like almost double the work. But I'm only focused on what is going to improve you the most. I've thought about this probably more than certainly 99% of other biology teachers out there. And I'm only giving you advice that's going to improve your grade. That's it from me. I'm sorry for overrunning by a half an hour, but I wanted to get all that fact in there. Let me know in the comments, obviously inside the course, which bits work, which bits don't, any other questions. I'm up to date with my comments. You guys are smashing with the comments right now, which is great. I am doing my absolute level best to plan all my lessons, get the content in there, and answer all your questions at the same time. See you all. Same time, same place tomorrow. I haven't really planned tomorrow, so I can't tell you what it's going to be. Exam skills, so it's going to be graphs and data and maths and stats. I can't do it all. I'll do the things that I think are going to value, you're going to value the most. Take it easy. Peace out. And if you got my email about the revision method challenge, have a go at the TT revision method. If you're new to TT, check out those videos. We're going to save your grade. Anyway, see you all very soon.